So question for you. Before we talk about the strategy side of what Peacock did, can we talk about Peacock generally? I feel like we've joked about Peacock a bunch in the past, but I don't know that I've ever heard you lay out exactly why Peacock is treated like such a punchline throughout the entertainment business. Can you explain like what happened there? I mean, Peacock was launched in 2020, and basically ever since, it seems like people have been making fun of it.
Well, I think it's hard to understand sort of what the point is. I mean, everyone was on wanting to launch their own streaming service. Peacock is owned by NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast. And I think the reason why Peacock is considered particularly bizarre is not just because you have these subscale sort of streaming networks. I think it's often lumped in with like Paramount Plus, for example, from CBS Viacom, or now called Paramount. I don't know. Their name keeps changing. It might be changed again whenever they merge with Warner Brothers Discovery or whatever might happen. But so just in general, I personally have a bias against the services because I think they're stupid. And like, I don't think they make business sense, and not on their own merits, just structurally speaking, this idea that you're going to have this plethora of sort of, services that are going to be sustainable, are not going to suffer from super high churn. I think all these folks just thought it'd be sort of easy money and didn't think through the particulars of customer acquisition, customer retention, all the sorts of bits and pieces that we've talked about. And my long-term structural thesis is there's going to be one or two big winners. Netflix for sure. Maybe Disney, if they can sort of pull it all off and pull it all together, but it's just not viable to have, the idea we've seen the unbundling of video, but what happens after unbundling is rebundling. And I don't see Peacock being sort of one of the big winners there. So that's just sort of big picture. But why Peacock in particular? Well, it's owned by Comcast, right? Comcast is the cable company. Comcast, at least in theory, makes money from people having cable subscriptions, and yet they are taking content away from their networks to prop up their streaming service. And it's like, why are you killing your business for this other thing? Now, you could make the case that Peacock is like a version of the Charter Disney standoff, where Comcast had reached the point where, look, all our money is made in broadband. Like the video business isn't even worth it anymore because all the profits get taken away by Disney or whoever else, mostly Disney, to be totally honest. And so we might as well go out and sort of do our own thing. That's all fine and good, but you're bringing in all these extra costs to sort of prop this up, and they've been able to get away with it because if you're a sports fan, for example, you still need cable, and so they're basically maybe they've turned the tables, you could argue, where ESPN will keep people paying for cable, and then they get to double dip by selling Peacock on the side, where you can use to access the NFL in particular. And now they have other content, and I think they're focused on sort of different niches and things along those lines. And that, I would say that's fine. It's not fine. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense structurally. It doesn't make any sense locally to the business. And in this case, when they put Peacock, they're going to have a huge churn of signups. Again, it's Sunday morning. We don't have any numbers yet. I'm sure if they're good, they'll be trumpeted all over the next couple of days. If they're bad, they'll dribble out through like tweets or something like that. Well, of new signups, how many people are going to stay? They're going to have a huge sort of retention sort of challenge here, sort of going forward. But ultimately, sort of to what end? They paid a lot of money, like $110 million for this game. They are, they're going to have a smaller audience than they would have otherwise. That's going to mean less money from advertisers. They're re-emphasizing the fact that cable is not all you need for sports, which sort of works against, again, theoretically the long-term interests. Maybe those interests have been so fully sort of destroyed by sort of, taking out money from the pie. But that's sort of the joke. It's a stand-in for all these streaming services that don't seem to make long-term sense, made particularly bizarre by the fact it's the cable company doing it.
Right. It's Comcast at the top of the food chain trying to disrupt the business that has served everyone so well over the last 40 years or so. Yeah, I mean, and putting the NFL on streaming, it's interesting because you can argue it both ways. You can say, look, if you go back to the 80s, you can look at the way ESPN was grown, and the NFL was used as a carrot to get people on cable, convince them to call their carriers and say, you need ESPN. And then the carriers are suddenly paying a premium for ESPN. So that blueprint is pretty obvious. On the other hand, it didn't seem like this particular choice was all that popular. And rather than call up whoever and complain that they can't get the NFL, I saw, universal disdain for Peacock over the last 48 hours.
What sort of brand
so.
association are you building where people associate you with massive irritation, sort of get what you want?
Right.
And there's two big differences with ESPN and cable before. So number one, and this is really important, you can have these levers to force people to sign up, but you have to deliver on the product in the long run, right? Mm-hmm. To ESPN's immense credit, once they got on the cable bundle and they forced their way on, it was worth it, right? The reason why they first got on and jacked up their fees for basically 40 years is because they provided great content. They had tons of sports.
And not only that, a service that just didn't exist before and that had a lot of utility to sports fans all over the country.
That's right.
All year round.
They were creating something brand new. If you went back 50 years, actually, all the stuff that would blow people's minds is almost less. No one would care the means by which you're getting sports games. The fact you can watch basically any sports game all over the world would be mind-blowing. It used to, even when I was a kid, the only thing you could watch was, yes, cable's coming along, but then you like some national games, and you could even watch all your local teams. You would get, and all your coverage would be via local beat writers covering your team, and maybe you could go to some games and things along those lines. And then, of course, the regional sports networks came along, and that was a big deal. But all of this is sort of brand new, and ESPN, again, to their credit, was creating an entirely new market. And they were, that classic sort of dictum that the customer doesn't know what they want until they get it. You can't ask them to design it. ESPN went out there and made it. And they went there and they leveraged all these cable companies. They made John Malone super mad, but it worked because it was a good product. The problem here is you go sign up. It's like extortion. It's like, okay, I get the one NFL game I want to watch, and then what? Then I'm going to wait for another year until there's another Peacock exclusive. There's no follow on. If you want to take this route, if you want to make people mad, you need to deliver on sort of the back end.